Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Peggy Smith. I'm a nurse with 4 decades of both traditional and holistic alternative medicine experience. And each week we'll be featuring a different modality, a different practitioner, or a topic. Viewers will be able to submit any questions or ask us to look at different topics that we might not have thought of if you'd like information. And for today, I would like to introduce my guest, Paul Matthews. He comes here from Dublin, Ireland, and he is a clinical hypnotherapist with 20 years experience. His 10-year mission has been to help 20,000 people suffering from PTSD and CPTSD, childhood trauma, and addictions, to help them heal their wounds and reclaim their lives and live their full potential. So without further ado, Paul, you're on the air.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm so happy to be here. It's a great honor to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, thank you. I've been a hypnotherapist for 20 years. That's a long time. And my passion and my specialty is helping people with PTSD, complex PTSD, and addictions.
So in your 20 years, with that being your mission, how exactly do you reach those goals and actually get your mission accomplished?
Okay. The only way I can really accomplish this mission is through groups. I will be doing one-to-ones, but my plan is I'd worked with a homeless organization for 20 years. I just finished up in July of last year. And my plan is to help as many people, up to 20,000 people, through the use of groups, online groups. So the plan is to run the Zoom sessions every week and people can come in and come out. So the protocol is a 6-session protocol. And I can talk more about that later, but the protocol would allow people to come in and out, and we deal with a different topic each week. And that helps remove most, if not all, the symptoms and the root cause of the trauma, PTSD, and complex PTSD. So currently I'm at the stage of contacting the local newspapers as I need to set up a case study. And that case study is going to be 20 to 30 people that will work with myself, and it will be done correctly through all the research methods. And then I plan to go to all the homeless organizations in Dublin and Ireland and offer this as a help to their clients. And that's the plan that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how the licensing and things goes in your country. Are you a clinical psychologist in addition to a hypnotherapist, or what exactly is required to practice in your country?
There's no requirements to practice hypnotherapy. There's no accreditation or nothing to stop us from practicing. The only thing we can say is we can't cure things.
Pretty much the same as America.
Yeah.
And how do you fund this altruistic project that you have? You still have to pay your bills.
Absolutely.
And that population that has a lot of, cash on hand for things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to pay the mortgage and feed the family, etc. Well, the plan is to get government funding, and that's why I have to do the case studies to show them that this actually works. Because we're in a homeless crisis, 14,000 people with, I think, around 4,000 families now homeless in Ireland. We've never had that before. And there's a huge amount of trauma. We have kids been traumatized during the pandemic. We've kids been traumatized because they've lost their homes and they're in hotels or B&Bs, bed and breakfasts. And there's a huge amount of trauma. So my angle with the government is prove to them that the protocol works and then show them how we can integrate that with psychotherapy, the psychology that the organization I worked with worked in. I'm also a qualified CBT practitioner as well, and a nutritional therapist. So those will help me as well.
Okay, that's exciting. Reflecting on the events of 9/11, did these events have any impact on your decision to focus on crisis and trauma?
It's where it all started, Peggy. I was planning to go to New York anyway in this September, and I was standing outside the passport office where we go and get our passports, and a rumor started trickling through the people in the line that one of the towers had been attacked by a plane. Sorry, a plane had crashed into it. And I got my passport sorted, and I was walking back home. I saw on a huge TV that the two towers had fallen, and this was hugely traumatic to us. If the United States, as we found out later, was attacked, can be attacked, what hope is there for Europe? What hope is there for the rest of the world? So this was so traumatic for so many people. And I even felt it myself. Were we safe? Were we going to go to war? And I found myself, like the majority of the population at the time, watching cable TV. We were watching Sky TV at the time, day in, day out. And every minute it was all bad news, and we were being hypnotized, and we felt so fearful, I think, in Europe and particularly in Ireland. We're a neutral country. We are part of NATO, but we're a neutral country, and anything could happen. And I felt that with my family and with people. And I had been training a few years earlier to be a pastor, and I had done some pastoral counseling around trauma and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to go to the United States and help. I want to help. I want to understand. So I contacted the Salvation Army, and a couple of weeks later, it was on Thanksgiving that I arrived, just before Thanksgiving, and then I worked with some people in Fulton in New York State. Absolutely gorgeous place, beautiful place to live. And some of these people hadn't, excuse me, hadn't left their homes since the events of September 11th, and all they were doing were watching different cable channels, buying takeaway, affecting their families, affecting their health. They felt traumatized, completely hypnotized that everything had changed. Of course, it had changed. And our job was to help people to recognize that they had to stop watching this news 24 hours per day, start eating good food, stop eating pizza and all of this, and let them know that, yeah, the terrible thing has taken place, but the world is still a beautiful place. And that was the message. Excuse me. That was the message we got across. I came from the pastoral counseling angle. There was no hypnotherapist with us at the time. And when I returned to Dublin, I said to myself, I need something else. There has to be something more powerful than the counseling I had used. Yes, it was effective. It worked for some people. Some people didn't change at all. And I did a lot of research and found that hypnotherapy had been the original brief therapy for PTSD, shell shock during the First World War, Second World War. This was the technique that had been used, hypnotherapy, by John Watkins in the US, you know, um, the Vietnam War, the Korean War. All of these wars, hypnotherapy had been used to cure people, and I'm using that word here, to cure people of all sorts of conditions, physical, psychological conditions. They use hypnotherapy, abreactive, what we call abreactive hypnotherapy. And I decided this is where I have to go. So I contacted the NGH, the National Guild of Hypnotists, and did a 6-month course here in Dublin. Fantastic course. And then I joined the Dublin Simon community at that stage. And what I found there was I wasn't allowed to use the skills that I had learned, because you could either do psychology or psychotherapy. We could do CBT and community reinforcement approach. And they were the only modalities that we could use. So I had this set of skills that could take somebody and find the root cause of the trauma and help them remove it and completely change their life. But we weren't able to use it. And that was the issue for me over the 20 years that I worked there.
Okay. So, how do you integrate your personal experiences? I think you've already touched on that a little bit in your professional training to provide the effective training that keeps you within the scope of your practice.
Yeah,
Like
well, the
I know
first thing,
as a registered nurse, I that my license supersedes anything I do with hypnotherapy.
yeah,
Um, and if I'm in a situation where it would be, on the border of practicing a different medical field, I have to refer to a professional in that field.
yeah,
But there's still a lot I found that, we can do in helping people. So
absolutely.
what was your field before you got into all this? So have you
My
always
bit
been,
was I'd always been in the caring profession. I'd wanted to be a pastor and do pastoral counselling, and that was when I lived in the UK, and then I'd returned to Dublin, and I wanted to work with homeless people because I'd done a lot of work with homeless people in England, and I really felt that that was the area I was being brought to, and so I started working with the Dublin Simon community. I offered them hypnotherapy. They said, sorry, you can't use that. So what I did was I integrated it in lots of little ways. So through mindfulness, through, when I was doing one-to-one sessions, saying, just close your eyes now. I'm just going to give you a few suggestions. And it was just positive stuff. You're going to be feeling better. You're going to, want to use alcohol less, this type of stuff. So I was able to introduce small bits of hypnotherapy, but using the idea of relaxation, mindfulness, because at the end of the day, they are relaxation techniques, and a lot of hypnosis involves some form of relaxation or another. So I was able to integrate it, but not to the level that we could change people's lives. Now, I use CBT, so we would be working with clients who had dual addiction, so may have mental health, alcohol, drug issues as well, and we would use the CBT and the community reinforcement approach. So that's very powerful, developed in the States. So we involve the community and the family with the the alcoholic or the drug addict, and that's very powerful in itself. And then the CBT was to deal with the behaviors around the addiction and try to change those behaviors with new, better behaviors, you know. And I would slip in stuff wherever possible to help people. And then the greatest thing they did was they put me in charge of all group programs. So I created all the group programs and were slipping in all sorts of things that were beneficial and changing the whole group program about the psychology of the addiction. That was really important as well, and exciting at the same time, because before that it was quite dry material that we had to use. Yeah, and
so,
we changed everything around. And people to this day who I meet still talk about that group program, which is great. And it wasn't just me, it was my colleagues as well, of course. But I had been put in charge of that. And what I had sensed was one of the most important groups I did was a group on the seven pillars, the seven psychological pillars of
mm,
being wanted, needed, cherished, loved, accepted, all of these things. And I never worked with one alcoholic or one addict who didn't have maybe four or five of those things missing in their life. They may not feel loved. They may not feel cherished. And actually, the amount of people who didn't even understand the concept of being cherished was incredible to me, because I'd grown up in a family where we were totally loved. You know, I'd felt
right.
loved all my life. Very lucky, because after working with the Dublin Simon community, the amount of people I worked with that never felt any love in their life, and the only acceptance they got were the people who were involved in addiction, because they validated each other, and they were looking for validation, for acceptance, and they got that in the homeless community, in the drug taking community, but they didn't get it from society or their family. And we were about trying to reintegrate them back into society, and sometimes into a society that didn't particularly want them. Only at Christmas you would see the people, donating and looking after people, but as soon as Christmas ended, maybe at Easter, that people would come back. And I saw over the years so many people die that I worked with. And I thought, what would happen if we'd been able to touch that person with all the techniques of hypnotherapy? I'm not saying that it would have worked with everybody, but it would have given them a better chance, I think, to deal with the addiction from the root level. So that's really what pushed me into learning about PTSD, trauma as well.
Yeah, the cognitive behavioral therapy was, uh, very big 20 years ago. It's kind of so mainstream now, I guess. But they started off with mindfulness and relaxation techniques, and just same thing, but just called it different names.
Yeah,
Um, and I find with my private clients, I often just say, I- I'm not doing something to you. I'm teaching you basically self hypnosis so that you can do it yourself and have the
yeah.
tools to move forward. Um, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions and challenges about treating PTSD, and how are you able to address that? I would imagine, in 6 sessions, you can lay a foundation perhaps or plant some seeds, but is there any follow up with these clients to see, to support them when they go further?
Oh, absolutely. So I suppose when I say to people, and it is on my website, that we can remove most, if not all, of the symptoms and the root cause of PTSD in 6 weeks or less. Now, is that true for everybody I've worked with? No. Some people it can take 8, 10, 12 sessions, and we always follow up. And the way I work is if you work with me privately, I also hold group sessions. You can attend the group sessions as often as you might need to as well. And I'm always available to people. But from my experience and from my colleagues' experience, this can literally remove most, if not all, of the symptoms within 6 weeks. And the reason why this works is that we use six different sessions. So the first one would be negativity clearing. So we're asking the person through visualization, and they're in deep hypnosis, and we are asking them to remove the negativity in their life. So that's session one. The second session is ego parts, where we ask them to invite the part, because if we understand PTSD to be uh, an injury that happens to the subconscious mind, in the subconscious mind rather. So it's a subconscious injury. And if you can think about maybe a baby in a cot who's a couple of months old and the parents are fighting all the time, that baby can't get up and walk out. It can't leave. Its only way of escaping this is to disassociate from its core. And so that's how it tends to cope, disassociation. But as that goes on, an injured part gets created, and that injured part goes in through life until it's dealt with. I'm just using that one example. I'd say that child gets bullied in school and continues to get bullied, and they become traumatized because of that. A new injured part is created, and that follows them through life, and all the different traumas they have in life can create an injured part. And our job in the ego part is to ask that person to identify the part that causes them the most trouble and to get them to enter the room. And this is all done through deep hypnosis. And then to have a discussion with the part to find out what's your purpose. Why are you making me feel this way? Why am I feeling this way? What happened to you? And the idea is that they try to reintegrate that part back into the self. And when that happens, that is so powerful. That can be a huge change in the second session if that part agrees to reintegrate with them. Now, it might take a couple of weeks and it might take till the 6 weeks, but this is how the process works. And this process was developed by John Watkins. He was a psychologist, the one we're using in the Second World War, working for the US Army, and he discovered a predisposition to PTSD, which saved the American army enlisting up to 1 million men. They were utilized by the army, but not to go to the front, because he recognized if you had lots of adverse childhood experiences, you would be predisposed to getting PTSD on the battlefield. So they actually started doing work with each person who was going to join the army and checked their life experiences. And as I say, prevented 1 million people being drafted to fight in the Eastern European front. You know, that's where we get the techniques from. Now, these all started in the First World War, though. So Craig Lockhart Hospital in Edinburgh, the Richmond Hospital in Dublin, all used hypnotherapy to cure shell shock. And there's quite an awful lot of reports and great videos on YouTube, actually, of these places showing the men with deep shell shock, which later became combat PTSD, and showing them with different conditions, like maybe being blind or not being able to walk properly, and stuff like that. And after a few sessions of hypnotherapy, the same guys not having these conditions anymore. It's incredible to watch. And it's the power of the subconscious mind. It's not my power. I don't have any. I direct the client to go there, ask to see the part, and they do all the work. They do all the work. They talk to the part and they find out why that part was created. And we get them to cut the cord between the part and themselves. And if they do that and the part agrees to integrate, that particular part goes back into the self and they don't have that trouble anymore. So that's
That's
how this
really,
process works.
yeah, that's really fascinating. But I guess the educational experience I have in that field, when you're integrating, you sort of have to replace whatever that part served. Like
Yeah. The
maybe
IFS way of thinking. Yeah.
right, teaching like self forgiveness. One of my favorite books is Colin Tippin's forgiveness book. Authentic Happiness by Marty Seligman talks about gratitude. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people don't realize, as bad as their situation is, we almost all have something to be grateful for. Um, I, you just can't take away their support system, I always thought, without replacing it with something to go forward with, and to give them the confidence in self, teach them to love themselves. And that's a pretty big challenge.
Yeah. And we have two sessions. So we have a session which is forgiveness of others. And then it's the fifth session, which is forgiveness and acceptance of yourself. And they're pivotal. They are so a huge part of this process. Absolutely huge part of the
Yeah.
process. And this could now, as I said, it could take 8 sessions, it can take 10 sessions, and until we integrate all the parts that come forward. And sometimes it takes a lot longer, and that's okay. We continue to work with people until we've done, and sometimes the person will go away for a couple of weeks, process everything they've learned maybe in the previous 4 to 5 sessions, and then have dealt with some of the other issues themselves because of the information that they learned, which is really powerful. And if you want, I can give you an example of somebody I worked with a couple of months ago, which is a good example of this. And it's a lady who was a complete people pleaser. If you asked her to do something, she would do it, no questions asked. Even if it went against her nature, she would just want to please everybody. And it was really affecting her health. You know, this doing everything for her family, doing everything for the people that she loved, and people can take advantage of this, of course. And that's what she felt. And when we were doing the sessions in the forgiveness of others, the part that came forward was her father. And she believed that the video that she was shown by the part was of her always pleasing her father, and the anger if she didn't please him that he showed to her really hurt her. Now, she had no conscious recollection of this, but this came out through the session. She was able to forgive her father in the forgiveness of others, and then able to forgive herself because she always put herself second. And that's what she felt she had to forgive. It was affecting her health, you know.
Right.
And when she did that, there was a massive change in her,
Now,
complete
one of
change.
the common tools with CBT, of course, they encourage journaling, um,
Yep.
as a tool to kind of keep processing what you learn in the sessions and things like that. Do you also suggest something like that for people?
Yep. Some people want to do journaling, some people don't. What we encourage people to do is to stay in touch with us and to update us as to how everything is going. And to be quite honest, most people who are going through this process, do want that support, and they do keep us updated. Now, a lot of people will go with the gratitude side of things, as you mentioned earlier, really important, keeping a gratitude journal, being grateful for the changes in their life, being grateful for the information they've got, grateful for the new possibilities. We really do encourage all of these things. We encourage them to talk about what they're going through, to process it, to allow the processing, because the processing can be quite hard. If you learn something that you weren't consciously aware of, you know, you have to be able to manage that. And that's part of the support we provide. So once you've gone through the 6 sessions, it doesn't end there. We are available to people. We help people as and when they're required. As I said, they can come back to us as often as they like. But this is the most powerful protocol I've ever used, I have to say. It is just unbelievably powerful. And from my experience and from the case studies from my other colleagues, it works for them too. Does it work for every single person that comes through the door? They mightn't get everything that they want, but they may have tried EMDR, they might have tried psychology, psychotherapy, breath work, and they didn't get to where we go with the hypnotherapy. But in most cases, we get a nearly full dealing of the symptoms of PTSD, and they don't come back. And that's the power of the protocol.
Okay, one thought that comes to mind, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's difficult to reach the psychological needs when you don't have a place to live and food on your table and things like that. Is Ireland more supportive as far as the mental health needs of people? And that's still a challenge in America. I think insurances don't want to pay, and it's difficult for people to access if they don't have resources.
Yeah. No, we're not doing a good job. We used to. When I first started in homelessness 20 years ago, we had no problem getting a bed for somebody, or housing for that matter. But now we can't get housing for people. It's really, really difficult. And like the rest of Europe and probably America too, unless you're paying privately, you're on long waiting lists. Now,
Right.
we do have dedicated teams in big cities like Dublin, would have 3 or 4 dedicated teams that will work on the psychological side. They will have psychiatrists, nurse-led teams,
Crisis teams.
psychiatrist-led
Yeah.
teams, multi, yeah, teams, and that's great. But they can still only see a certain amount of people, and the need is far greater than what's actually available to people. So yeah, this is one of the challenges I have, is if I'm working with somebody and they're in a hostel, yeah, how can we how can they stay sober for a start, living in a hostel? And how can they process the information if they're not in a single room? That is a huge problem, and that's what, when I get these case studies fully completed, that I'm going to do. I need to start speaking to all the different organizations, offer the protocol, offer to teach their staff if they want, how to facilitate the clients to help them better along nutrition, trauma informed care. All of these things are really, really important as well. So it really is important that the follow up that these clients are given, and as you said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the housing, food, security. If you're homeless, you don't tend to have those things. So possibly the last thing you want to do is get rid of the alcohol or the drugs, because it's the only thing that keeps you going.
Right.
So we have to get the people, when they say, where I used to work, in recovery or in detox, or they're in sustained living, or they're in permanent houses now. There isn't that many. We have a housing crisis, massive housing crisis. As I said, 14,000 people homeless, which is a scandal for this country. It used to be a couple of thousand. I think it's around 4,000 families living in hotels, and not great hotels. So you have one room with a family of maybe three or four, two adults, two, three kids. Kids are doing the homework. They have to cook in there. They have to do everything in there. It's actually a scandal, an absolute scandal that's going on. And we're going to have children growing up, and all they know is trauma. All they know is chaos because our government has failed to address these situations. And that's where I see hypnotherapy being such a powerful modality. As I said, it's the original brief therapy. Things were taken care of very, very quickly. And that's why it's so powerful. Does it work for everybody? No, nothing does. But does it work for the majority of people? If somebody comes into my office, or I do the discovery call with them, and they believe that hypnotherapy can help them, they've already hypnotized themselves that this is going to work. So we're halfway there. Then it's up to how I interact with them and explain the process to them. We build rapport, which is really important, and then we do the work. Now, the person who trained me, Sarah Gillian, she explains like this: we're just a tour guide. We get them to the part of the subconscious mind that they need to get to, and then we guide them, and they do the actual work, which is extremely powerful for the clients. And that's how we operate.
Okay, I think on that, before we go to the next section, we'll take a break for our sponsors for a couple minutes. And yeah, but thank you so far. It's been very interesting. I have a few more questions that came up.
Thank you.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, Paul, we're back. I had a few. I know when I keep comparing America to Ireland, and when you say you have 14,000 homeless people, I think the city that I live in, unfortunately, has at least that many, if not more. It's a very bad time, and COVID didn't help. A lot of resources that were available all over the world for people, were not available once COVID, became an issue. And we also have a problem in America trying to meet the needs of the returning citizens community. Um, and they are someone that could certainly benefit from these services. But again, it comes down to funding and, convincing the politicians that this is a worthwhile cause. Do you have any, do you work with that community at all in Ireland, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We certainly would do outreach when I worked in Simon into our major prisons. And we took a lot of clients directly who would maybe be on the last 6 months of their sentence. And we then take them into recovery. And interestingly, during COVID, we had far less um, relapses than we had at any other time because people were so scared of, losing the accommodation and ending up on the streets that they stuck to the program. It was actually the best results we ever had was because of the COVID pandemic. I think during the first year of the pandemic, we only had 4 or 5 relapses where we could easily have that every month before
Oh,
that, you know,
right.
and that was an interesting, you know, part of the pandemic. People just realized I've got good accommodation. This is nice. I'm looked after, good food. I'm going to stick with this. And we did keep people for 6 months rather than the 3 as well. But yeah, we do work with that community, and it's a really important community. Reintegration of people that made mistakes. Some of them may have done horrible things, but we have to be able to reintegrate them into our communities. Now, am I right in thinking this could be an old idea I have that if you've been to prison, you're blacklisted for life in parts of America? Would that be true?
I wouldn't say in parts of America, but there are, a lot of people that, would not hire somebody,
Yeah.
uh, and it makes it tough. There's a lot of challenges that they face, and, they're trying to deal with their addiction and stay on the straight and narrow, and, they can't survive.
Yeah.
Um, I had an experience many years ago as a visiting nurse. A teenage child of a younger patient that I had seen. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and I found myself on the same street seeing one of his neighbors. And I saw this group of kids up at the top of the street, and I was parked in a minivan that had a lot of windows, and I had an expensive English Cherry bicycle there. And I thought, well, what is, what is. And the kids came down to me, and one of the kids said, "Yo, nurse, remember me? I'm Jamal's big brother." And I just said the first thing that came to mind. He said, "You'd be so proud of me. I've turned my life around. I'm going to preacher school in September."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, I just saw you make a drug deal at the corner." And these kids are looking at me like, and he says, "I've got to pay for preacher school somehow." And, I didn't have a response to that. He was
Great
trying to
response.
better his life. And, you know, um, I had a child. His mother had passed away of cancer. He had a 5-year-old sister. The funeral home wouldn't come get the body uh, unless they had $1,000. He asked me to stay with his sister for a couple hours. He went out in the street and sold what he needed to give his mother a proper burial. And that's just a
Wow.
failure in our social work system. And I saw the child, the boy, years later. He had gotten custody of his sister, and he was in college at the time, doing well. But to survive, he had to do what he had to do to give his mother a proper burial. And it's
Yeah.
hard to fault that.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know,
Fair play to him. That
it's
wouldn't happen in Ireland because the state would pay for a funeral. If you can't afford it, the state will pay for it in every situation. I
okay.
think
Do
that
you have the socialized medicine in Ireland too?
yeah, yep.
Okay,
Medicine is if you are homeless or if you are under certain pay bracket, you don't pay for GPs, you don't pay for hospitals. Now you are on waiting lists, of course, but we actually do have a very good social security system in
yeah.
place, and we still function even with all of this stuff. That's one thing that we do very well. Now, in the current cost of living crisis, it's not enough, but if you're stuck, you can go to the state and request, different reliefs, and there are many, you know, as well. But
Including the mental
it,
health services.
yes, mental health services are all free.
Okay,
Things like contraception are all free. GP care up to I think 15 is all free. And we can see a GP quite easily. And you get up to 15 minutes with your GP and you don't have to pay for it. So those sides of things are good. But the mental health services for adults are underfunded. They don't have enough staff. And even for children as well, actually, the CAMS, the child and adolescent mental health services, are short 200 psychiatrists in Ireland. That's a
Okay.
lot of psychiatrist posts that are not filled, and that's all over the country. So that's the downside of Ireland. you know. But going back to the prisoners, it's illegal, not to give somebody a job. The only job they can't do, they can't join the police and they can't join the army,
Okay.
as somebody who, particularly if it's been for a violent incident, But once you've served your time, you've served your time, and it's illegal for somebody to not give you a job because you've served time, and that's how it should be, I think,
But they
to
can
give
always
people.
say there's another reason they're not hiring you. I mean, they don't
Oh,
have to say
absolutely.
that's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's true.
Have you,
But at least it's in legislation.
okay. Well, that's, encouraging. Um, have you used hypnosis for any other kind of issues or any kind of
Yeah,
other?
weight loss. A lot of weight loss. So I would offer the virtual gastric band. So
Okay.
where the person wants to lose weight, and we take them through visualization and through deep hypnosis that they're going to get the operation and they're going to get the band fitted, and we have smells of a hospital, and we have all the noises of an operating theater and all the bleeps, and the subconscious mind believes, obviously consciously they know full well that they haven't had an operation, but it tends subconsciously to work as long as it's reinforced, and that's the most important part of it. So that would be a 4-session protocol that works amazingly well. And I do anxiety, I do addiction and fears and phobias. They're the main things that I offer, but the specialty is PTSD.
Okay. Have you tried anything like the past life regression? Do you get many clients requesting that?
I've never actually had a client requesting it, but I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, when I was training, we were trained, we were taught how to do past life regressions. Now, I didn't believe a word of it. I had no interest in it, but I'd learned how to do it. Now, one of my colleagues, we used to practice with her because she always wanted to do past life regression. Every time we worked with her, she'd be a witch in a different country, in a different time. She'd more than likely be murdered, burned at the stake, and we do all the work. I knew how to do it. I cut the cords. But at that time, if somebody had said to me, Paul, I'd like a past life regression, I wouldn't have done it because it would be wrong of me not to believe in it and to work with that person if they do. It come true in how I operate with that person would affect the rapport. But one time, Agnieszka had asked me to actually do, she wanted to practice regression therapy. And what happened was we do the normal regression hypnotherapy, and she gets me to the place where I'm supposed to go. And so she says the standard questions: alone or with somebody, daytime or nighttime. These are the questions we ask when the person enters the regression. So I say it's daytime, and then alone or with someone. So, but I can hear people. I can't hear them very well. So she says, okay, you now can hear everything perfectly. I said, there's some people arguing. And I look down and I'm a baby. Now, I'm not, obviously have not regressed to my current life, really. I don't know at this stage, but I'm a baby, but I'm like on a metal table, a really old style bed. And I look up and there's a man and a woman and a doctor between the two of them, and they're arguing really badly. It's a horrible situation. And I can feel at the time the stress of this situation. And I listen to what they're saying. And the man is saying that this is not my child, it's my brother's child. This was his wife at the time. And, they had an affair and all of this. And I don't want this baby. And the woman's pleading for the baby's life. And I'm going through everything that you would probably go through in that situation at this time. And the guy starts fighting with the doctor. I'm watching this, and he pushes the doctor out the door, and he comes over to me, and he picks me up by the legs and just whacks me off the table. Now, I was on a massage table at the time doing the hypnosis, and the girl I was working with said I went right up like this and then fell right back down. So I had a physical reaction to this, which I'd never had in hypnosis. She'd never experienced it either. And during the going back down, I felt air going into my brain. It was the strangest sensation that I've ever had in hypnosis. And I die because he kills me. Now, she didn't allow me at the time to go through the dying process. I know that is part of some past life regression. But the next part is I find myself looking down at the situation. I can see my body and I can see the man fighting with the woman. I'm nearly positive he was choking her. And then she cuts the cords of that life to this life. And when she brought me out of hypnosis, I just cried. It was uncontrollable sobbing, crying. I wasn't expecting this to happen. Neither was she. We were going to be following up a regression she had done a couple of weeks before. And what's interesting is I'd never put the two regressions together, the past life and the my life regression. And that previous session had been I was walking with my mother going to church, and she had said to me, Paul, I'm really worried about you. And I'm saying, what, Mammy, what's the problem? And she says, you're putting on a lot of weight. What? Do you not love me was the words I said in the regression. Mommy, do you not love me anymore? I said, of course we love you, but we want you to be healthy. Now, the last person I had spoken to about this had said, that feeling of not being loved, because I had very loving parents, as I'd said earlier, really felt loved all my life, could have been that past life regression. And when she said that to me, it was a eureka moment that potentially it really resonated with me that past life had affected this life. And as Agnieszka had cut the cords, that issue had been resolved. It was fascinating. I didn't believe it, but I do now.
Years before I had even considered becoming a hypnotherapist, I had attended a group regression session. And in my background, I was actually adopted. I didn't know anything about my birth history. I was an older child when I was abandoned. And one thing I want to point out for anybody that's watching is that when you are participating in something like this, you have a way out. You're not trapped. Like if it's something that your mind cannot accept or it's too overwhelming, you actually can pull yourself back to the present and to a safe place and, remove. And in this session, I actually found myself in one of those steel baby cribs like they had in the hospital with an oxygen tent. And I didn't understand it at the time. I did meet my birth family later and learned a lot of interesting things, including that I had been hospitalized many times for croup in the hospital with those stainless steel cribs and, oxygen tents. So that really made me think about, like at some point I wanted to go back and, finish the process. But do you ever run into challenges with the false memory syndromes when you're working with PTSD or, things like that? That's a big ethical issue sometimes brought up here in America.
Sure.
Uh,
And it would be brought up in Europe as well. You see, in the old style of regression, I would have done all the talking to the part, and the person would have spoke what the part was saying to me. Yeah.
okay.
But now, this therapy, the client is not required to tell us the trauma they've been through. They don't have to relive any trauma when they work with us. And it's up to the client to tell us what happens because it's all done in their mind. They're talking to the parts, you know? So that ethical thing doesn't particularly come up for us because I can't say to that person, well, that can't be true. It's
Right.
what they
I'm
see,
thinking that
what
the
they
human
feel.
mind wants to please its person. Your mind
Mhm.
wants to please. And so that's where the whole idea came about, I think, with the false memories is, if you, for whatever reason in your history that you remember or don't remember, if you believe you were abused and, that's the story your mind wants to create for you. That's always been a questionable uh, ethical problem, brought up here in America, and a lot of people that are against something like the past life. And I've also found certain parts of America, there's a lot of religious, especially in the fundamentalist religions, I lived in the southern United States for a while and was told many times hypnosis is the work of the devil.
Yeah.
Uh, and do you find that kind of resistance in your country too?
A little bit with some Christian people, fundamentalist Christians, but actually, I've done a lot of work with Christians because of my pastoral background. For them, I will integrate whatever they want me to, Bible verses, God, Jesus, whatever they need. So I can do that. It works really, really well for them. But yeah, I have come across being called a witch and all sorts of things, you know. But going back to these memories, if it solves the problem for the client, even if it's not real in
Mhm.
them, but it creates that they feel they may have PTSD, or they've gone to a psychiatrist or a psychologist can't diagnose PTSD here, only a psychiatrist can, or a doctor. And if they go to the psychiatrist and he says, yes, you have PTSD or complex PTSD, and we go in and we resolve the issues, to me, that's job done. We help the reintegration, giving the parts new jobs. We work with the people around all the other things, journaling, their nutrition. It's a complete package, this. So if the work is done, you know, and the mind has created a memory that's not true for them, you know, to me, that's between them and their subconscious mind. Now, ethically here, like hypnosis is not used in the court system because of false memories.
Okay.
It used to be, but it's not any longer, you know. So for me, it's like a past life regression. If somebody goes into a past life regression spontaneously, and I've had a number of people, I've no issue with that.
Okay.
You know, we'll do the work, and if that resolves the issue, we've done the job. And the person has left in a better place than when he came into the office or through Zoom or whatever it is. So that's how I would see it. But no, we wouldn't have an opportunity to say be involved in court cases or anything like that.
They don't have the recognized field of forensic hypnosis then in
Not here,
Ireland?
no. I
Yeah.
think in
Okay.
the UK potentially in some cases they do, but I'm not sure if it has to be relied upon.
Okay.
I've
Right.
never heard of a forensic hypnosis, you know, session going on here in Ireland at all, to be honest. It'd be quite interesting
Uh,
if it
yeah,
did.
I don't know that it would actually help benefit the criminal, that's being charged with anything. It probably would help the prosecutors more.
Yeah,
Um,
potentially.
yeah. So, how would somebody reach you if they wanted to contact you for your services? One thing COVID did for all of us is made virtual, a reality, and we've been able to reach a lot more people.
That's a great thing that happened, absolutely. I work with people all over the world, not just in Dublin or Ireland. I can work with anybody. And the easiest way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is www.paulmatthews, Matthews, hypnosis, and it's .ie for Ireland. So www.paulmatthewshypnosis.ie, or if they want to through Facebook, if they prefer social media, it's Paul Matthews Hypnotherapy on Facebook. And it's the same on YouTube and Instagram, TikTok. It's Paul Matthews Hypnotherapy as well. And I'd be delighted to help somebody if I can in any way. If they've got questions, please feel free to ask me. I deeply care about people, and it's my mission to help people. If you've got PTSD and you need help and support, please get in touch with me. I will help you. And if I'm not the right person for you, I'll refer you to another person who is. So I'd be
Okay.
delighted for people to contact me.
Right. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we should know about, or any closing comments you have?
Well, I want to thank you as a starting point for inviting me. This has been an amazing experience. I do talk a lot. I'm
That's
Irish, so we're
very interesting. I've enjoyed it immensely, and my mind has been going constantly thinking, the constant comparison of what both my traditional medical background and what happens in America. Um, but this is really going to be an exciting endeavor. That each week we'll be covering different types of alternative or complementary therapies. Some shows will be based on common health problems like perhaps Crohn's disease, uh,
Yeah.
to show people that, especially with insurance challenges, getting those infusions, there's a lot you can do with your diet. I'm also an integrative health nutrition coach. So whenever I do weight loss, I include that in my, it's not just abracadabra, now you're skinny. I tell people, we're going to actually get some CBT and some nutrition teaching, and
Yeah.
um, because that's what holistic means. It's everything. It's not just the one problem that you come to focus. And even with the PTSD and most dissociative people, people that say that they're not hypnotizable, if they have PTSD or some other form of dissociative identity disorder, they've been hypnotizing themselves their entire life. That's how they survived. And I find that those people are actually the easiest to hypnotize. Um,
Absolutely. I
you
fully
know,
agree. My experiences, traumatized people are so easy to hypnotize. As you say, they've been hypnotized their whole life through their trauma.
right.
Absolutely.
And maybe we need to think more about the effect that the all the access to TV that we have. Um, but this has been a great show to start off with. I appreciate you coming on. And,
Thank you.
every week we will have a different modality. From nurses, I have a functional medicine doctor, integrative doctors, all kinds of different topics that we'll be covering over the next 52 weeks. So it's been a pleasure to have you today.
And I look
Uh,
forward to watching them as well. Thank you so much, Peggy. It's been an
Thank you.
amazing experience. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, and good luck with your endeavors in Ireland. And it's been very interesting to compare the two countries. I'm really glad I invited you today.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
good luck to you too as well. Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Thursdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.